This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Isotope, Native Instruments, SAE Institute, Atom Audio, Spectra 1964, and Picker. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now recorded through a Spectra 1964 STX 100 mic pre and mixed with Isotope, Ozone, and RX on Atom Audio monitors and headphones. Grab my free mixing course at Mixmaster Bundle with the link in the show notes below. And please make sure to visit our fantastic sponsors also in the show notes and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
When I first walked into fame, which was, I'd seen the documentary and just had my entire worldview shaken of that. I had no idea that Muscle Shoals was even a place. It was like, wait, a bunch of 19-year-old kids from Alabama. Roger Hawkins was 19 on this. Like, what the hell is this? But the thing is like those pockets and things. I'm a big. Once I got out of like trying to be Danny Carey or Carter Beauford as a drummer, and I got into like studying what pockets were, like Steve Ferroni and all this. Roger Hawkins is one of those ones that I didn't even know I was listening to until I saw the documentary. I remember watching the documentary and then getting to go down, and some friends of mine said, yeah, you can just go by and ask for so-and-so and they'll walk you into the room. And I remember walking into Fame A and getting chills walking in the room, just being like, holy shit, like all this music was done in this room. And that was like my first experience like that, where I got to like, you can go up and you just kind of touch it, you're like, wow,
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Dreaming of a career in audio or the entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs where you'll learn on professional-grade gear with industry pros, learning through real projects, not just lectures. Explore studio production, live sound, audio for film, and a whole lot more. Or take the entertainment business program to learn about contracts, promotion, and more. With diploma, associate, and bachelor's programs, there's a path for you. Book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Jay Tooke, a Canadian-born, award-winning producer, drummer, multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, and mix engineer, now based in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. After a 14-year run in Nashville, Jay developed a reputation for his innovative and organic approach to production, working with artists like Randy Houser, Cody Johnson, Lindi Ortega, James Otto, and many more. And he's produced 6 #1 singles and multiple top 10 across Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, with credits ranging from mixing for Cody Jinks to drumming on albums by the Steelwoods. We had Jay on the show back on episode RSR526, where we talked about his transition from band life to the control room, mixing in Muscle Shoals, and embracing a less is more approach to production. And today we're catching up on what he's been working on lately at Fame Studios and Noble Steed since moving to Muscle Shoals and digging in deeper into his creative process. So please welcome Jay Tooke to Recording Studio Rockstars. Jay, are you ready to rock, dude?
I am, man.
How'd you like my speed intro read?
That was good.
Blazing right through.
Yeah,
right?
right through.
I'm trying to, it's always funny because like you're sitting right there and I'm like looking over here and reading this thing, but
yeah,
just trying to get the flow going. So welcome to the studio, man. This is the new podcast video studio.
I like it.
Now labeled Ready to Rock Studios.
There you go. Nice, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
So tell us a little bit more about where you're at now. So I think last time we probably talked about your background and things like that, and your time in Nashville, but you recently moved down to Muscle Shoals.
I did, yeah. I left the Steelwoods back in 2019, and I think we would have done things just after that, the first time I was on the show.
Probably 2020 or something. Right?
Something like that. But yeah, it was, I started working down there actually not long after we talked, and made a couple records at Fame, and really, really dug the vibe down there. And then I got hooked up with Craig Alvin, and Craig and I got to be really good friends really quick. And I started bringing him in to engineer things. And, through the course of that, as I know Craig was just on the show, but as I'm sure he talked about, I've kind of dubbed him the mayor of Muscle Shoals, right? Because he's done a really good job of getting a bunch of music folk that, we're all working on cool stuff. And he does a really good job of like bringing people down there. So I went down, had dinner with him and Meredith, his wife, and a bunch of other friends that he brought in. And just over the course of us working on projects, I spent a bunch of time down there and really started to fall in love with the area, and thankfully, like, with the way things are now, like, I don't have to be in Nashville to do this thing anymore. It's a close drive, and so if I need to be here for something, I just get up a little earlier and drive in, and it's nice. But the whole idea for moving down there for me was just slightly slower pace. I moved to Nashville 14 some odd years ago, and it was a lot. We all know it was a lot different place back then.
It was a slightly slower pace back then.
Yeah, it just felt like a really big small town.
And I moved here 35 years ago.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean,
it's changed a little bit.
Just a little bit. Like I remember the first time I came to Nashville in 2007. I mean, we went down. I was down for a writing trip with an artist that I was working with, and somebody said, you got to go to Roberts. So Saturday afternoon, we go have lunch, and then we drive downtown, park in front of Roberts, go in, and that was, I mean, that's just how it was. But, and down in, the great thing about Muscle Shoals, and I live in Florence, which is, one of the towns, but is Craig always said that, when he got down there, every time he drove into town, he could feel his shoulders relax. And I started to notice that the longer the sessions would go, the longer time I would book down there, the more relaxed I felt and the better the work felt. It was a lot more comfortable, just being creative in that space where there's not just this, I call it sort of noise in the background, this energy of a big city.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, it's been really centering, and it's really helped me, at this, sort of I'll say maybe the second half of my career, just like really starting to pick up, with a lot of more producing and mixing, is I found another gear down there, it seems. And not to get too woo-woo on the whole thing, but, it's just that there is really something about that area that's just, you can take deeper breaths, and you can, take a little bit more time with stuff. And it really does just allow you the space there to be a little bit more creative. And the ideas seem to come easier. I can't really explain what it is, but I'm really, really loving it down there.
Well, I've been really having this like secret, affair with Muscle Shoals too, just by going down and visiting and being really excited about how it felt down there, and looking, like browsing, like, what's it like to get a house down in Muscle Shoals and stuff like that.
It's really cheap.
I know. Don't give it away. Don't tell anybody. Shh. But but that's been fun. And then I did in the last fall, I was like, all right, Lidge, you need to, get out of Fantasyland in your head, and why don't you just do a day trip? So I went down there for a day, and I just spent a day in Sheffield driving around and looking at everything, looked at houses, figured out what the streets were, and really got familiar with it. And it was great because it helped me be a little more realistic about what some things, you see pictures of places and you're like, what's that like?
Right.
You get there and you're like, oh, okay. But it really got me excited too. There's a beautiful, I just really like Sheffield a lot too.
Yeah.
The main street there, what's the main one that runs up to the water? Montgomery.
Oh, yeah, Montgomery goes into 6th, and then 6th goes down to the water there. But yeah.
Yeah, and Montgomery's beautiful, very classic old street. And then there's a park there, and I went for a walk and met with kids who were jumping off the cliffs into the river. I'm like,
yeah.
Hope I don't have to come rescue you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about it, is that the older I get, the more I want to get back to the town that I got away from when I got out of high school. You
right.
know?
Yeah. I feel that way too.
I grew up in a town of, there's like 5,000 or 6,000 people. And
this is in Canada, right?
Yeah. It's Weyburn.
Where
Weyburn,
Tooke is a hat.
Yeah.
Not your last name, which is also not your last name because I mispronounced it. It's actually Tooke. Sorry about that.
It happens, man, all the time. Weyburn, Saskatchewan. It's basically, I grew up an hour over the border, pretty much 2 hours dead north of Williston, North Dakota, middle of nowhere. But it was that thing of like, you know, like there's kids that ride their bikes in my neighborhood, you know, and I'm not in some like fancy, you know, it's just like a regular neighborhood. I mean, there's kids. Yesterday there was kids riding dirt bikes up and down the little mountain bike trails in my backyard, and like it's just that pace of living to me just seems to really appeals to where I'm at now, and that's the biggest thing I love about it. And like I was saying before about the being able to create in that environment where, you know, there's just time, and I get to take time in the morning for myself. I don't have to get up and burn 90 minutes in the car because I want to stop and get a coffee and do this and sit in traffic and do all this shit. It's like I can get up, you know, take my dog. We go to McFarland Park, which is right along the river. Like, you know the bridge that goes over into Florence from Sheffield.
So that was somebody that I met down there. Will McFarland is a great guitar player. Is that the same family name there?
I'm gonna guess maybe. Yeah, I mean, Will. I just actually played a show with Will on Tuesday.
He's great. I really like that. I met him and his wife. They're really cool.
He's a trip. He's great. But you know, we'll go walk in this park. I can do 3 miles in the morning along the river, and be at home and making breakfast by 8 o'clock, and take a little bit of time to just breathe and meditate and get myself together. And by 9 o'clock, I'm mixing, or you know, just whatever. Or I can, and if I have to get to the studio in Sheffield, I'm 12 minutes from my front door, and it's just the most relaxing way to work. It's amazing. I just love it.
That sounds really, really good.
Yeah, we're gonna get you down there.
I'm working on it, man. I'm thinking about it. I mean, I don't know if other people in my life will be excited about it or not. We'll find out. Yeah. But I really like the place every time I visit. So I'm already thinking about coming down and staying a little longer. One of the things you talked about, like maybe you used the term creative flow.
Yeah.
So that has become a really important factor to me. I've noticed about myself, for example, I just went on a trip where I went down to Costa Rica and went surfing.
Yeah.
And I let go of all the home and stuff responsibilities. And I found myself much more able to, you know, explore writing lyrics as poetry, write songs, record new songs, do all of that. Just like it just opened up this whole like creative flow for me.
Yeah.
And so I felt like finding a place where you feel like the creative flow is more relaxed really helps. It helps me. I did just have Al Evans on the show, and he gave us a nice hard like pushback on that too. He's like, I finally learned that like creative flow is whenever you decide it is, you know. It's like, which was it's encouraging too. You know,
it is.
It empowers us.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, for me, it's been this journey of like trying to find quiet, you know, in all the noise that is this business that we're in. I remember years ago, Eric Valentine did a thing on his YouTube channel or whatever.
Who's that?
Just kidding. So, you know, just my favorite engineer ever. I cannot remember the name of the engineer, but I think he took his own life. But he did a whole thing about mental health, and it was something that really got me thinking about the fact that I very happily spent 10, 12 hours a day in a room with no windows.
Right.
You know, and then you start to really take a look at that and think about how little time, you know, you have. And I'm probably going to keep repeating myself on this, but, you know, living in a city where there's a long commute time, you know, so like in the morning is about the only time you really see any sunlight, even if I try and take like ear breaks and go outside and take my dog out and, you know, do the thing. But it really does start to kind of get to you when it started to get to me, like just being around all this energy as a city starts to grow so quickly, you know. And I've talked to friends of mine in Atlanta that were there, you know, Paul Diaz, like, you know, we've had similar conversations about that where he, you know, he talks about just things get a little more chaotic and everything just starts to feel frenzied, and you don't really realize it until you get away from it.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, is that like for me, just having time every morning to just take a minute and appreciate the day and where I'm at, and just the fact that I don't hear this loud traffic noise everywhere that I go, that I get up and it's quiet and I can hear the cardinals.
That's true. That's what I noticed on my trip too, the quietness and hearing the birds and the animals. And then I came back here, and you really do notice that you're
Immediately
constantly hearing the hum of the city,
Yeah. Well, and we are in recording studio rock stars, to nerd out for a second. My old condo that I had in Donaldson, on my balcony, because I was just off of Bradley Parkway, but on my balcony, just my phone out, I pulled my dB meter out one day on a Saturday afternoon. It just sort of lived at like 75 dB.
Right.
On the back porch of my place, and I'm on an acre and a half, and at the end of a dead end street. I don't have any neighbors. It's all treed in. It's gorgeous. It's a great spot, but out there it just rests at 20.
Really?
And it'll spike when the birds chirp.
Wow, spiking when the birds chirp. I love it, man.
So,
I love it. Life is good when your dB meter spikes with the bird chirp.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And I think part of the creative, you need the quiet, is because you can't, I feel like and I know we're getting all woo-woo about it, but the creative stuff it's like a whisper of an idea.
Yeah.
And it's like when it's noisy, you don't have a chance to hear it. Now, granted, there's another side to that equation. There's something to be said for the wildness of punk rock and loud distortion and everything, and the things you discover in those places. But even those are like, you're discovering like distorted feedbacks and things that are almost like the whispers inside the chaos.
I would think that it's all kind of relative. Like noisy music will thrive in situations like that. But I'll stay on the woo-woo trail here, but I'm reading this book that a friend gave me by Ram Dass. It's a meditation book, but it just talks about like when you're in a place where where your body and your mind and everything isn't like dealing with noise and dealing with chaos and dealing with all this crazy energy. There's a lot more space for those things to come to you, and it's like very quickly. And and for me, I think this extra gear that I talk about, and this extra, like, I feel like, you remember when you were a kid and like you started maybe writing songs, or like you were jamming with your buddies, or
yeah, they're usually about train tracks and waiting on track 9.
Yeah, just or like that
the boulevard. You use words like boulevard,
yeah, just all that shit. But there was this, I remember for me when I was that age as a musician and as a songwriter, and even when because I started recording, I had a 4-track that I got very early on. But there was just that excitement that where you didn't think about it because we didn't know all the shit that we know now, right? It was just, there was that excitement and that moment and that thing that happens. And being in a place where, I'm not constantly just sort of dealing with the energy of a big place like this, like it's allowed me to sort of get back to that real excited 13-year-old kid again. And I feel like I've got that mindset where it's more like, instead of thinking about how I'm going to do something, I'm just sort of reacting to the project. And that's whether I'm mixing or I'm writing with somebody or just whatever it is, just that thing has been, it's been so important to me, like through this whole process of getting down there and getting settled. And there's really something to be said for that. I think that just being able to get back to that place where, when we all first started doing this at one point, where like we just didn't care, we just wanted to do it because we had to and because we loved it. Right. And that's the headspace that I've been able to find living down there the last 6 months or however long it's been.
Well, and when you start out, I think it's appropriate to want to spend every hour of the day in the studio and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I have no boundaries in my 20s, and so you could discover what the hell boundaries are.
Yeah.
Which I did. And then I switched to my place here with my studio, and my studio used to be surrounded by fields,
Yeah.
down the other end of my property. And so then I'd start learning how to have a different balance. I'm like, I want to take weekends off, or I want to, have time where I'm working and time where I'm not working. So it's personal time.
Yeah.
And then I think now at this stage of my life too, which is inevitable in a lot of places, particularly cities, it's like now they've built 6 houses around my studio, and it's like you feel the growth of the city. It's like houses are like weeds, you know?
They are, yeah. But I mean, you also kind of feel that energy of like that might feel a little claustrophobic of having all these people sort of invade that clean area that was around the space you created, you know?
Rockstars, if you want the ultimate toolkit for your music, check out Complete 15 from Native Instruments. With 165 instruments and over 150,000 sounds to choose from, it is the most powerful creative tool in your studio. From Contact 8 to Massive X, Battery, and Guitar Rig 7 Pro, you've got everything you need to create in any genre. Pair that with Native Instruments control keyboards and machine hardware, and you get next level integration that makes music creation fun, fast, and seamless. Head on over to nativeinstruments.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off. So now I'm also thinking like, well, okay, so maybe I'm interested in having places where I feel creative and write, and then come back to the city studio to put the band in and you know, like hunker down, nose to the grindstone, and just record, you know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So I don't know. But I just think it's, you know, your life changes. You know, life changes.
Yeah.
As we get older, new priorities. So we've had a house for a while. If we have a house, you know, or a place we've lived, that changes, and then we come up with new priorities. Yeah. But that's cool, and Muscle Shoals is beautiful. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Now you sent me, so Rockstars, we have Jay Tooke, not Tooke's playlist in the show notes, so you can go click there and listen to a lot of these amazing records that he's done. Many of which are down in Muscle Shoals, many of which are here in Nashville. And you also sent me some stuff that isn't out yet, where you said like, "Ooh, we just recorded at Fame, and it sounds." I joked, I was like, when you were listening, I was like, "Man, did it really hurt your feelings for it not to sound very authentic?" Because of course it sounds exactly like, you know, it sounds like this was an outtake from an Aretha Franklin session or something like that.
Yeah, man, yeah. That was artist's name is Chrissy Poland. She's from Boston. She's a background singer for, I mean, Bette Midler, James Taylor. I mean, the night before she was down, and she's out with Christopher Cross, I guess this past summer, or whenever this will air, but she was singing with Elvis Costello the night before she came down to do this stuff. And my manager, Jason Spewak, has known her from her time in New York, and brought her down and introduced us. And she had this idea. We are also going to be doing a record of her songs, but she had the same experience I had when I first walked into Fame, which was I'd seen the documentary and just had my entire worldview shaken of that. I had no idea that Muscle Shoals was even a place. It was like, wait, a bunch of 19-year-old kids from Alabama, like Roger Hawkins was 19 on this? Like, what the hell is this?
Roger was drummer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was so great.
Man, just like
his level of excitement too.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is like those pockets and things, you know, like I'm a big, once I got out of like trying to be Danny Carey or Carter Beauford as a drummer, and I got into like studying what pockets were, like Steve Ferroni and all this. Roger Hawkins is one of those ones that I didn't even know I was listening to until I saw the documentary.
Right, exactly.
But, you know, but I remember watching the documentary and then getting to go down, and some friends of mine said, yeah, you can just go by and ask for so-and-so and they'll walk you into the room. And I remember walking into Fame A and getting chills walking in the room, just being like, holy shit, like all this music was done in this room. And that was like my first experience like that, where I got to like, you can go up and you just kind of touch it, you know, and you're like, wow, you know. Because
it's still the same, you know, a lot of it is the same equipment, same space and everything.
Yeah.
I guess some of these older studios have had some moved locations once or twice over the
but it's still decades. The same building. They've still got their chamber. They've still got the same plates. The pre's from Rick's original UA console are now mounted into a box. They still have the console itself, but but then they have there's a Neve desk that they put in, I think in the late 70s or early 80s, but And it sounds great. But yeah, I mean, you know, I made a record with Charlie Argo there, which is there's some stuff on there from the
So
playlist.
good sounding. The Charlie records sound really good, man.
Thank you.
Oh, but by the way, you mentioned, I think you mentioned Charlie, your dog, who's right here at my feet here in the studio, and then my dog Daisy's just out the door. So you may see our studio dogs on this interview.
Yeah, Charlie's a star. But yeah, I did Charlie's record there. I did a record with James Otto, which hopefully by the time this airs is going to be out. And the thing about it was for me is I wanted to learn how to do that. I wanted to learn how to put 7 players in a room. Like I would bring percussion down live with me, like everything, and we'd overdub horns and stuff later. But you know, to be able to go into that room and try and honor the energy in the walls and like what was there before us is great. So meeting Chrissy, she had that same sort of thing. Her first experience in that room was the same kind of thing. It was very emotional, and she's big into, you know, Aretha and Candy Staten and all of that stuff. So she had this idea.
Doesn't hurt that you can sing that well.
Oh my, yeah, like come on. And she wanted to record an album of these songs that she could, you know, cut some vinyls, and we're going to tour some stuff with that, I think. But I had the band was me on drums. Jimbo Hart from the 400 unit, bass player from the 400 unit. Kelvin Hawley, do you know him? Guitar player. He's in that Will McFarland world too. Played with Little Richard for like 20 years.
Oh, maybe I did. Is he in the Fathers and Sons band?
He is.
Yeah, I did see him. He was great.
Monster.
Both of those guys together were a blast to watch.
Yeah, he's a monster. And then Kevin Gastongue, who plays keys with Corey Wong. And that sort of world of, you know, Minneapolis.
Right. Super funk.
Yeah, badasses. And it was amazing, man. Like, we just didn't, you know, those kinds of things, like, it's those types of projects for me anyway, are very much, it's not about a lot of talk and prep time. Like, and I was telling Chrissy this when we were putting the band together, because just figuring out who was going to be the right fit. And I really base a lot of that picking players based on, have I played live with them? And I'd played with all of them before. And it's like, okay, when I sit down and play, like Jimbo and I immediately just had this thing, and where I love playing with him. Kelvin and I and Jimbo and some other friends down there, we'd just gone out and just done a couple of fun bar gigs, and you know, and like the way I know that their pocket on stage and like how effortless it feels to play on stage. As soon as you put those people in that room, it happens. And same with Kevin. Kevin lives here in Nashville, but I'd done, a friend of mine named Matt does this thing called the Greasy Chicken Review once a month,
right,
up at, you know, and I've played on a couple of those, and Kevin was on the first one that I did. And he's a lot younger than the rest of us, but his pocket, he sounds like, he's so good. He and I had sound check on that gig. I remember played 8 bars of music together, and it was like we'd been playing together our whole lives.
That's
you know,
great.
We're all inhaling and exhaling at the same time. And then Craig engineered. He brought his 610 console that he talked about, I'm sure, when he was here. And you know, 2 mics on the drums. We put a 665, I think, and then an 87 right about here.
What's the 665?
That's the EV, you know, the real goofy with
dynamic.
Yeah, it's
sort of in front of the kick or somewhere.
Yeah, or maybe it was a 667. There's a bunch of different. There's the 666, the 667, those big silver EV mics from the 60s, and that was it. You know, it's the great thing about that room is that as long as you tune the drums right, and you've got a good sounding guitar rig, you know, it's pretty hard to fuck it up.
That's so great, man. That's so great. And so let's talk a little bit more about that, about the 7 people in a room thing. What are lessons you've learned about how to make that work? Talk to us about, like, what's the quality of the room like? Which instruments are included? What things are isolated? I mean, you said horns were overdubbed.
Yeah.
You know, we'll ask the dumb questions. You know, why are horns overdubbed as opposed to happening at the same time?
Because drums are loud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us all that stuff. And then, you know, you said 44, the RCA 44 for the overhead. Was that it? Oh,
no, it was an 87. Sorry.
Oh, an 87? Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Sorry, that was my bad.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a bunch of records like that now, and I kind of learned this from Matt Rossbang. This is probably 10 years ago now. I played on a record in Memphis. It was the first time I met him. And, you know, just watching him put minimal microphones around a room, I was like, I need to learn how to get better at this. So, I mean, when you're putting that many people in a room, like, it really just depends on the engineer and like how authentic you want to get to things. And I think for like,
how about the song style too? Like, would this works for particular kinds of music, but might not work for others?
It does, like yeah, especially in a room like that. I mean, you know, I'm sure we could do the big, and I've done the big kind of multi-mic, you know, drum mic setup things in Fame, and it works, you know, but that room really sounds like that room.
Yeah.
You know?
Plus, I think it's a good reminder that, like, there could be a style of sound that you get from a certain way of miking up a 7-piece, but it doesn't prevent you from expanding your vocabulary of musicality. You could just play songs with a wider difference in feels or whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
not everything has to sound like an Aretha Franklin cover.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it really, honestly, like, so much of it just comes down to the drum sound and how you're miking up the drums.
Yeah.
If you do that minimal thing, you're going to get that minimal sort of sound of those older recordings. But, you know, I've been in there and done stereo overheads and done a room mic and done all the, where you get like 10 or 12 mics on a drum kit here. And it sounds unbelievable.
Right.
You know, but the biggest thing about doing that, really in any room, is that you want to make sure that the things that you need to isolate, you want to isolate. And for me, it when I'm mixing those projects, it really comes down to just like how much bottom end from, you know, are we going to have a live bass amp in the room or are we just going to go DI? Because that bass amp is going to be in every single thing. And that always has a certain, you know, for me, and I know that there's a lot of people that are a lot better at managing this than I am, but like having that really focused and sort of really mono feeling low end on something that maybe needs to be a little more hi-fi sounding can be a bit challenging because when especially if you've got some room mics or you've got, like, they've got some great PZMs on the walls in at Fame, you end up taking away all the character and the cool out of the room mics because you've got to start dialing back that bottom end because you don't need all of that thick.
You don't need too much boom.
Yeah, you know, so that's...
And the PZMs will give you that?
They will, yeah. You'll get just that woofy, like that kind of 1 to 250 kind of range that just gets a little weird. But I mean, really, it just comes down to making decisions in the moment. I mean, there's also really something to be said for, like, when we did Charlie Argo's record, you know, I had them set it up, you know, how they did with, like, when they did the Aretha records and all that. So Charlie was in the middle of the room facing me while I'm playing.
Really?
Yeah, with an 87. No, it was right here.
So what's the distance between him and you, the drum set?
Me to the wall. Like, he was...
Well, I mean, people are listening to this, so you might have to...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Verbalize it a little more.
Listening. I mean, he was 8 feet away from me, from where I was sitting at the drums.
Looking towards you. So his vocal mic is maybe cardioid projecting in your direction, and then your drums are like, I don't care. I mean, your drum mics are like, I don't care.
Yeah, basically.
Drum mics are like, we get drums, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you know. But I mean, that was when we had the bass amp live in the room. And
yeah, so and talk about that. When you mentioned the DI versus the bass amp, what because I'd love to, and I don't want to derail where you're going, but I'd love to know, where do you put the bass amp? What kind of mic do you find you like on the bass amp for that situation?
Yeah.
And what does the bass amp bring that the DI doesn't, and vice versa, whatever?
Well, the one thing the bass amp gives you is if you're going for that really legit early Fame recordings thing, that's going to do it. Because really, at the end of the day, the piano mics become the room mics.
Right.
Right. In that case. So if they're not using the piano, from what I've been told, they would always put those down anyway, just to give you a little lefty righty when they needed it. But
and what kind of bass amp is there?
It was a B15.
Okay, flip top.
Yeah, and it was a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. Bobby Holland engineered that record, the Charlie Argo record.
So good.
Thank you. And yeah, he nailed it. But
was that Charlie one that you're referring to? That was at Fame, or that wasn't it? Because you used to be at Pentaveret, where
I was, and I was at I had the B room at Pentaveret when we did that record. Right. So, but we went down. Charlie wanted to cut there, and I really wanted to do that record there too. Yeah. But we had a B15 live in the room. Probably put an RE20 on it, because I just love that microphone.
Yep.
And basically, Bobby, you know, we loaded in the night before, which was really nice of them to let us do that. And just set everybody up, you know, opened the room where the B3 was, and we just sat and jammed and got it to a place where like I would adjust my playing on the drums versus how much of the piano I could hear versus, you know, the guitar amp, and Bobby would go and sort of turn things down.
You guys are in earphones though, right?
We are in headphones, yeah, but a lot of that I would
I don't know
play.
why I just said earphones. I've never said that in a long time.
This is 1984. Get your earphones out, kids.
Rock stars, are you ready to unlock the full potential of your mixes and masters? Then you need iZotope Ozone 12. This complete tool set gives you 20 pro modules, including the new bass control, unlimiter, and stem EQ, plus the IRC5 maximizer for loud, clean mixes and masters without distortion, including the new mastering assistant that guides, not decides, so you are always in control. Go to iZotope.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off.
But he, he would walk around and we would just sort of get the room happening. And it is that thing of, if the source is right, I mean, more than half the work is done.
Yeah.
You know, if we can get it so that it's just, so that I'm not playing super loud and like overpowering everything, you know, then, and we all just sort of balance together. And, you know, and it also comes down to like people playing really good parts and being really cognizant of like, it's not just like everybody on all the time. That record was great because I had Jackson Epley on bass, who was also another Pentaveret. He had the C room at Pentaveret, still does. Great producer, great, really amazing bass player. And then I had Alex Rahal on guitar from the band Them Vibes, and he was also solo artist as well. Brother Love on percussion. We put him in a booth, which was great. And then Tyler Kane was there playing electric, but also double duty on piano. And then John Henry Trinko on B3 and whirly stuff. And it was sorry.
I was just going to ask you, you mentioned them Vibes, and I was remembering the drummer from Them Vibes. Was it Sarah?
Sarah Tomek.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw her play probably the basement or something here once.
Yeah, she's a monster.
And we were just like, that's a really good drummer.
Yeah, Did
she go off to play with Steven Tyler and stuff like that?
Yeah, she did that gig. She's played with everybody. And I can't remember who she's out with right now. It's an 80s artist. Anyway, it'll come to me. But yeah, I got to know those guys because I'd go sub for Sarah occasionally and it's really fun band. Really, really it's just 2 hours of everybody dancing and feeling good. It's a lot of fun. But we had all of us there in the room, and Tyler is would sometimes we go down with like Wurlitzer, and then John Henry would be on B3 or B3 and piano at the same time. And it was nice to just have a guitar player that could come in, and we could, you know, we didn't do more than 3 songs a day.
And would you do B3, Leslie, in the room with you guys, or would that be isolated?
It was in one of the booths, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I say, and they're not really isolation booths as much as they are reasonably thick walls that you can still hear a lot of drums through. And you do get a little bit of that B3 bleed too coming into the room, which is kind of cool. And
it might just be out of convenience that that's a good space for it to live, but I'm curious whether having that in the same room with the drums would, I mean, it's just, you know, some of this stuff, there's not always an answer. The answer is like, try it in your studio, see what it sounds like, you know?
That's basically it. I mean, that's what they were doing, and that's what Rick Hall was doing, is just figuring out what this room did. Yeah. You know, it's not like now where we have these guys that we can have them come in and do all the math and like design a thing. It's like, well,
I thought we were supposed to reference YouTube videos to find out how.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, right. I forgot.
Like this one. Well, that's cool, man. So let's see. So the bass, and then how do you describe, well, you said, maybe you did answer that, but like the DI versus amp, I mean, the B15 is the sound of Fame.
It is.
Or Muscle Shoals sound.
Yeah, very, very early on. But I will say, just with the stuff that I sent you, Christy's stuff, like just pulling up and printing some roughs, I do like the DI. I like having a little more control in the room, and I think that definitely carries to like pretty much any other studio. Is that the amount of time that I spend, carving and finding holes for the bass amp that is ultimately in every single microphone in the room.
Right.
Like it immediately just it's just the additive nature of low end. It's everywhere, and it takes. I mean, at least me, it takes me so long because. Takes me twice as long to do the mix because I have to be able to. It's like you can get the bass and drums happening, and then you put everything else in, and then that'll just it just goes to shit. Right. So
yeah, probably a good learning lesson too about when you're mixing stuff like that. Just a good reminder of like just don't solo it, don't solo because you're just it isn't true until you have all the mics in there together and then you're figuring it out.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Balancing it all out.
And it's amazing like how much of that they just did on the fly, back in the day, like when they were cutting all those records.
Right,
like,
they hadn't done the song. If you're doing the song now, you already know what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, I know.
When they did it, they hadn't done it yet. So it was just like, that sounded pretty good.
Yeah, there's a lot of accidents in that room.
So if Aretha was in there singing with you, she might have been a mic in the room too?
Yeah, so this stuff with Chrissy we actually put Chrissy in the booth for this, but for those sessions, so basically, if you think of the room at rectangle, the room is rectangular. You walk in the door, immediately to the right is sort of the long way, right? So you turn to the right, it sort of shotguns down, and then the control room's up. So when you walk in, the B3 is right there. And then the drums are right beside that. And then there's a big gobo and then another gobo around the piano and a little wall between the piano. And there's this little bass nook that's about 5 foot by, however long. And then a gobo basically directly in front of me. And then 2 guitar players with the guitar amps isolated with these little things that look like they were kind of built to house a Leslie. And if you were going to do that thing. And then at the end of the piano for the Aretha sessions, she was actually, her vocal mic was like right beside the piano, which was right behind her is the glass for the control room.
Right, because they're probably, as players, they're locking in together.
Yeah.
And it probably helps for the pianist to see her face and for her to see the pianist's face.
She was playing piano.
She was playing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So.
Come on, Lidge. Well, that's really cool. And then when you said the amps were in a thing, so it's like little gobo closety sorts of things or boxes.
We just sort of slid it in. I mean, it's still loud in the room. You can hear it. But what's amazing on the tracks is like how, and we had an 87 on the guitar amp, is how little, almost no drums. And I'm talking this thing was, and open to the side of me. So like there's a gobo here and then there's about a foot of space and then this thing that they slid up that went around the amp. But like the body of the amp itself was wide open and you could hear it in the room. But what was amazing to me is that there was absolutely no drums in that microphone. It was insane.
Well, the cool thing about setting up guitar amps in the room like that is as a guitar player, I think amps breathe in a room very differently. I know my little ISO booth, they can sound cool in there, but they sound quite different if I put them in the big room.
Yeah.
A bass amp in particular, it's like it needs a lot of breathing room to even speak, and have the low end sort of focus.
Yeah.
And then as a guitar player, I think you respond to your amp different when you're in the room with it than you do when it's just, coming through a little headphone jack, headphone speaker or through the speakers in the control room.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about standing in front, like, especially if you're doing like big rock guitar tones, like there's nothing better than standing in front of your amp and just going wide open.
Yeah, as a drummer, you've taken this shit for granted because you've always been at your drums.
Yeah.
Never had to deal with that unless you start using like digital drums or something.
God.
So let's see. The next question you talked about, as long as people play the right parts. One of the things I wrote down that I feel like is a good drummer question for drummers, but also for producers who are trying to respond to drums is, tell us about fills. Where do fills belong in songs? What's the right amount of fills?
Is there an answer for that?
What are fills that are just, that's the wrong fill,
90% of what you see on Instagram. That was a terrible thing.
Like, was there a learning process for you where you had to dial yourself back and then you discovered that, like, you know, just playing a straight beat sometimes is the magic?
I mean, basically, like I started out, well, you know, playing along to the radio and, you know, Def Leppard and AC/DC and, you know, and then, you know, when I was like 13 or 14, you know, I remember seeing Living Color on the Arsenio Hall show and just being like, whoa, what is this? Like they played Cult of Personality and it was just like, it was like my head exploded. And then like a couple years later, I saw, you know, like Pearl Jam came out and I saw the video for Sober by Tool, you know, and like hearing all that kind of stuff. So I really went down this rabbit hole of, you know, I spent the first probably 10 years that I guess 8 years that I was playing drums, just boom, whack, repeat, you know, Phil Rudd.
Boom, whack, repeat. I love it.
You know? And then I got into playing notier stuff, and I really got into like Dave Abruzzi's from Pearl Jam, like you know, Will Calhoun and Danny Carey and Dave Grohl and like all this kind of busier drumming, and that led me down this, you know, having a big drum kit and like lots of, you know, shit to play and noises to hit. And then when I got out of high school and I moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is a very big, it's about 1 million people. It's a really great music scene. It's definitely a hub for the arts community and the music community in Canada. A lot of really incredible musicians have come out of there. The Guess Who's from there, Joni Mitchell's from there, Neil Young's from there, and cut my teeth there. But it was there that, you know, I was playing guitar in like indie bands and you know, I would play bass in like some shitty cover band on the weekend, but playing drums would be my thing. And then I fell into country music kind of by accident. I was playing guitar and singing in this cover band of like, you know, playing Jesse's Girl and, you know, whatever bullshit. It's we played at this nice club. We had a house.
There's a really, really, really funny Saturday Night Live skit about Jesse's Girl. I just learned. I think it's an older one. I forgot who.
I remember it, but I can't remember this.
But he's singing it. And it turns out Jesse is the name of the drummer, and his girlfriend is sitting right next to him. And then he's like singing the song, and the drummer's like, he's like, dude, what? That's not cool, man. And it goes on. It goes where you'd think it would go. A little surprise twist at the end.
A little twist. But yeah, so I was in this thing, and there's this Canadian band called Doc Walker that. A friend of mine was the drummer in my cover band, was playing drums with them, and they needed a guy to come out and like stage manage and, you know, play. I played banjo on a song and just like, I was sort of like an extra body, but got to go on stage. And their first, the tour that I did with them, they were co-headlining with Dierks Bentley.
Mm-hmm.
And it was back in 2007. Eric Church was opening for us, which was hilarious. To think about now. But it was that, like, I knew nothing of modern country music. Like, I was playing drums in prog bands and like playing in a church and playing all these gospel stuff like Fred Houghton or Fred Hammond and Israel Houghton and like really busy kind of stuff. But because I was associated with that band, everybody started calling me to play on country records and work in country stuff. And I had no idea what I was doing. So it's a very long answer to your question. But basically what I did was, you know, fills and like transitions and stuff. I started to listen to guys like Chris McHugh and, you know, Steve Ferroni and like all of those guys. And like, what are they doing? And what is it about their playing? And so much of it is just really goes back to like, what was Ringo doing back in the day? You know, Ringo could do more with a floor tom at the end of a phrase than most people can do with anything. Right? That thing. And it's so. I started touring with this other artist that wasn't a country artist, but I got rid of like, I had 2 rack toms and splash cymbals and 2 chinas and 2 floor toms and all this bullshit and cowbells and just crap everywhere. I went kick, snare, floor tom, hi-hat, ride cymbal, crash ride cymbal. And I toured like that for 3 years. And what I learned was you don't have to play fills. Fills for me, like when I'm playing on a record, they're not part of like, it's not a thing of like, okay, I'm at the end of this 8-bar phrase. What am I going to do? What hot lick am I going to burn? Like, how am I going to show everybody how cool I am? It's like, what's my job here? And Chris McHugh is one of the best at this. He's so good at, he does this thing where like you get up to a thing and he can just go and land on a chorus, but he does it in a way where he just sort of gets on top of it just a hair. And I call it the lean, and you get into it like in modern pop, country, whatever music, like fills are just more of like transitions of energy between sections to me. It's not like in the 80s when I was listening to Skid Row records where like, you were going into a chorus, you were going to burn some fucking giant lick that you'd been working on. And that was because that was the thing. Everybody had a flashy guitar player and a flashy drummer. Right. And it's just not like that. So much of stuff these days that I work on is just, that's not what it's about. It's more about like that fill just becomes, it's just bumping it up a little bit. It's there to carry you into that next section as opposed to be something that you really notice. Because at the end of the day, with that minimal kit that I had on the road for 3 years, like just getting really good at just and just doing that to the point that like I don't even have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
It was the biggest lesson and one of the hardest things I had to learn to do as a drummer.
I think when I first had a chance to work with Fred Eltringham,
oh man,
too, same sort of thing. It's like, wow, man, he just lays down a solid beat. It's not a lot going on. It's just the right stuff going on.
He's another one of those guys, that those Sheryl Crow records that he was on. Like I remember just listening and like he's another one of those guys that you can hear his pocket a mile away. It's like hearing Ferroni play, and I know I keep talking about McHugh, but like McHugh's thing, like all of those guys, like they get hired because they have a thing, and they know, when Fred gets called for something, you just know that you need that record to feel like that.
Yeah.
And those songs will benefit from his thing that he does. It's cool.
Are you ready to launch your career in the audio or entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, right here in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs to prepare you for the industry. From studio production and live sound to audio for film and a whole lot more. You'll learn by doing, working with professional-grade gear alongside experienced industry pros. If you're more into the business side of entertainment, SAE's Entertainment Business Program teaches essential basics like contracts and promotion to help you navigate the industry. With diploma, associate, or bachelor's degrees, there's a path for everyone. Plus, Career Services supports graduates as they take the next step. Want to see it for yourself? Immerse yourself in Nashville's exciting music scene and book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, a.k.a. the second half of the show. My guest today is Jay Tooke, joining us here at Ready to Rock Studios.
We are ready to rock.
You ready to jam, dude?
Yeah, I'm always ready to jam.
All right, sweet. Well, let's see. We were talking about fills. I pulled this up. We were talking about Fame Studios, so I thought maybe I'll do a little screen share.
Yeah.
And show everybody what Fame looks like. And I can find us some pictures or something like that. See if this will work. I might have to click it myself. Hold on. I guess we'll find Studio A there. What am I clicking on? Boy, I'm getting slow about this here. Here it comes, I promise. It's coming, rock stars. Hi, Daisy. There you go. Great. So this is the A room at Fame, correct?
Yeah.
And we can see various shots of the studio and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that Wurlitzer, that's the original one from.
Oh, and that's this right here.
Yeah. That's what.
Zoom while we're talking.
Yeah, that's the hey pup. That is the one that they recorded Never Loved a Man. That it was basically written like on that, that song as the story has been told to me is, they were kind of messing with it all day and they couldn't really just get it right. And then Spooner sat down and went boom, ding, dong, right on that one. And that's the one. What was cool, especially for Kevin that was playing keys on that session with Chrissy, like he sat down and I went, that's the one, right? And he was just like, oh, okay.
That's not scary.
Well, and what was even crazier was that
you mean the one I just spilled my Coke on?
Yeah. He'd never been to Muscle Shoals. So he'd never been to Fame, and he's like, this is bucket list for me. And then he hit some traffic on the way down. So he was running late. We were supposed to downbeat at 10. He walked in the door at 10:15, gave him a hug, handed him a chart. He sat down and played the thing. Like, he'd been in town for 20 minutes, and then he's in that room playing on that gear. And that's this cool shit.
So now, speaking of which, I know I cracked a joke about that, but where do you put your drink down in the studio? Maybe this is just sort of the minimal picture for the museum tour, of course, but like on sessions, I hate it when people put drinks on the floors because I'm like, I'm going to kick it over in my control room,
Yeah, but we do. A lot of times we just keep our coffee in the control room.
Right, don't bring it out.
Yeah, I always carry a water bottle with a good lid, but it's not a very big room. The ceilings are nice and high, which helps, but it gets pretty compact in there pretty quick.
Right.
So
Okay, and then looks like we have various treatments on the wall. These are maybe wood and then wood diffusers.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because this seems sort of forward thinking for that time, but maybe not. Maybe that's
I think that those were put in the 70s.
Okay.
I know back in the day, they like when it was first built, there's pictures in there. And it's of course got the asbestos tile that every studio had back then.
It's good for you.
Yeah, real good for you. And that sort of and that wavy thing. Like if you've ever been to Sun Studios, you look at the roof in there, like that's what a lot of the walls were there. So I think they kept a lot of the original sort of vibes and idea, but then just added those diffusers in there.
Now where the drums are in this photo, they're sort of to the left of the Wurlitzer and the organ, the B3 player's back would be facing the drums in this case. Is this where the drums would have gone on your session?
No, so if you take the piano, slide it out from the wall about 5 feet, right where it's sitting, take the Wurlitzer and sort of make an L shape out of the B3. Where the Wurlitzer is now is where the drums were.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Sort of closer to the wall.
Yeah, kind of shooting out
a little bit.
And then Guitar Land was directly across from me, the guitar player. And then where the piano's out from the wall, between the piano and the wall is where the little bass player nook was.
So I love that they got these like old school Altec speakers or something in here for playback in the studio.
Yeah, and they work too. They even just having being able to talk to Craig back and forth. They've got a great headphone system in there and a good talkback system and stuff. But it's fun just for like nostalgia purposes to hear and go, can you give me the whatever. It's pretty cool.
So and then the stairs going up to the control room because the control room is elevated and looking through the glass down on the floor, which is a cool, interesting way to do it too. There might have been all sorts of reasons they chose to do that just have to do with the shape of the building or something. But but it gives you a perspective where you can see kind of over people and see who's where. The whole room may be a little easier.
Yeah, and that seems to be like a lot of those studios from that era have that sort of design. Like Sam Phillips recording in Memphis is very similar to that, where you're up above a lot of the time. And even Abbey Road, which is an extreme, not that I've worked at Abbey Road, but just from pictures that I've seen, like, the control room is up, right? And they're looking way down.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was sort of an extreme version. That's like way up on the second floor.
Yeah.
And, it does float the control room floor from the live room, so maybe that benefits a little bit too.
Yeah.
But also, is this a double door? So like
it is, yeah.
Yeah, because you probably need that, otherwise the sound just blasts right through the control room. How is the isolation in the control room?
Pretty good.
I guess you were playing the drums, so how would you?
Yeah, but I've been on stuff in there where there's things going on. The isolation's really good.
All right, let's see here. Let's look at some more of these photos here. My Zoom thing's being a little finicky, but there you go. There's the console. That's the Neve that's in there now.
Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful. Gotta love those Neve knobs. I'm
I think that was one of the first ones they built. Yeah, so then that's B.
Oh, right. And that's the new Atmos room. That's Glenn Rosenstein's.
The Atmos room is actually off-site.
Oh, okay.
So this is that's Glenn's SSL. The Atmos room is actually in Florence, not in Muscle Shoals. So it's only about 10 minutes away, but that room is cool too. That's actually where we cut, in B is where we cut the James Otto record that I did. And I've done a bunch of other ones in there too.
That's a good sounding record too. And let's see if I can get the images of the room. I don't know where they are on the website. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just scrolling around aimlessly here. I'll just arrow over and see if anything comes up.
Yeah, I guess maybe not.
Oh, well. All right. Well,
whatever.
Don't worry about it. But anyway, we can describe the room. The room itself in B is like one of these cool sort of classic studio rooms where there's like the drum booth comes out and has almost like a little wooden shingle roof coming over it.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I've seen a bunch of those in Nashville. Such a great look and a fun way to do it. Or like you're in a restaurant that's trying to give you an outdoor vibe when you're inside.
That's exactly. Yeah, it feels like you're at the cabin. Yeah, green carpet and it's cool and it's kind of L-shaped, which is nice. And it definitely has its own sort of vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely different. Like you can get a lot more consistently modern sounding records in there, which is when I do work at Fame, it's nice to have the option that because you can pretty much do anything you want in that building. You know,
when you say that, what do you mean? Just as far as what kind of session you want to do?
Sorry, I should just say like sonically speaking, like, you know, and it's always, you know, I'm always picking studios based on what the drums sound like in the room because the drum sounds have such an impact on the sonic landscape of what the record's going to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm surprised to hear that you're interested in what the drums sound
like. I know, it's weird, right? It's just one of those things. But it's, you know, that room, like B, depending on where you put the drums, it all sounds completely different.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like
there's a harpsichord in B too, I think, when I was
there. Is. Yeah, which is such a weird instrument to me.
And who's used it?
You know, I don't know. I know that some bands have. I think they took it out of there.
Classic record.
Yeah, we'll have to do a little research because I don't necessarily
Aretha know. It was a little lesser known record when she did a series of Bach fugues. All right, cool. So let's see. What else should we talk about? Let's talk more about the Charlie Argo stuff because that was what you did talk about just now in the A room, or no? We were just pivoting over to the B room for that.
I did Charlie's room in A.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who did you do in B, you were saying?
James Otto.
James Otto. Okay,
yeah.
Great. And so what are some other qualities of the B room that are worth mentioning?
The SSL gives it kind of a thing. Like it's a really interesting marriage of old and new.
Mm-hmm. And both control rooms are like compact.
Oh, they're cozy.
They're long.
Yeah. Yeah. They're, what did Spencer say the other day? Rick didn't like an audience. That
right.
was, you know what I mean? We're not here to watch. We're here to work. But I like B, like if I want to lay it, if I'm playing on something, and I've taken bands in there too that I've just been engineering and recording. A rock band sounds really good in there. You know,
B.
Yeah. It was kind of the birthplace of the Allman Brothers. Like that's where they did the early rehearsals and like started to put stuff together. And you know, it's got a thing.
Is this a slightly tighter sound than A? Like is it a smaller room or is it? It's a different shape, right?
It's a different shape, but it's still separated by booths. So it's like you walk in and it's sort of L-shaped, you know. But there's booths across from you, so you've got a place you can put a singer and whatnot. But there's just I don't know what it is that's different. It is a little bit tighter sounding. Like you can get real loud on the drums in that room, and there isn't like cymbals in everything. There's just something about it, and it's got a real cool thing about it.
I'm doing the thing. What was the you said it was like Wayne's World where he goes into the radio station and the radio dude is like, and he's clicking.
Yeah. Handsome Dan, and what's the guy's name from Spinal Tap, the bass player from Spinal, what's that actor's name?
Oh shoot, I don't know. I'm terrible with acting.
I know. But he just like Handsome Dan, he's this short little, pudgy haired guy with a big nose. Just like Handsome Dan. Anyway, it's Wayne's World.
You signed with new management too, Noble Steed Music, and then, of course, I know Craig's studio, Noble Steed Studio.
Yeah.
Is that somewhere where you've started to do some work as well?
I have, yeah. That was a big thing for another reason moving down there was just that Craig and I have been working together so much, and he and I have done a lot of work just nerding out on getting the place dialed in to really have its own voice.
Great. So you sort of helped him a little bit with the drum room, or?
Yeah, I mean, Craig did the whole build on his own, and but we'll go down there and he and I'll just rub ideas together as far as like different microphones and moving the drums around and trying different things, and then it's been really nice. Like Craig's a good friend, but also being able like professionally to work and get a room dialed in and figure out a workflow, and because that stuff takes time. It's not like, I mean, this as well as I do. You don't build a place and day one it's effortless.
Yeah, right. You have to learn it. Hey, rock stars, imagine sitting down at your DAW with 165 instruments and over 150,000 sounds to choose from. That's what Complete 15 from Native Instruments delivers, the most powerful creative tool in your studio. Inside, you'll find Contact 8, Massive X, Battery, and Guitar Rig 7 Pro, giving you everything you need to create in any genre. Plus, you'll get inspiring sampled instruments like upright bass and electric keys, along with endless expansions to keep your sound fresh. Whether you're producing hip-hop, scoring films, or creating EDM bangers, Complete 15 has you covered. Pair that with Native Instruments control keyboard and machine hardware, and you get next-level integration that makes music creation fast, fun, and seamless. Go to nativeinstruments.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off.
Yeah, you kind of get to know it a little bit. So I started doing a lot of the once I moved out of Pentaveret and was making the shift down to Muscle Shoals. I was working out of Noble Steed pretty much all the time, and then through that relationship, I met Jason. Just because he would be in town and we would hang out and go for dinner and laugh and just, hang out. He's really, really great human being. And I had a couple of things that I just needed another set of eyes on, with contracts and whatnot. And I just said, hey, do you mind having a look at this? And then through that process, this working relationship came out, and it's been really great.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I love about Craig and about Jason is just their commitment to making something really great, and allowing that to sort of speak for itself. I mean, it's so easy, and I'm definitely guilty of this, have been guilty of this in the past. It's just, you start to lose focus on like what it is that you're doing and like why we do this. It's just, we all started doing this because music altered our DNA in some way the first time that we ever did it. And when it becomes your job, it's really easy to lose sight of like, why great music touched you and why great music did something for you, or has helped you through a breakup or a wedding or just whatever. Like it's that thing. And it's nice to be surrounded by people that we all work together, that we all have that same motive first and foremost, and believe that making letting something be the best that it can be ultimately is going to serve the music better.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be surrounded by people that have that same mindset. And, because Jason's he's a world-class piano player and songwriter, and, he's great, but he's also he's been in the industry for a very long time and is incredibly knowledgeable. And, the three of us working on projects together with, all of our collective input, it's just nice that there's a lot of mutual respect and just, having somebody that handles all the business side of what I do.
Yeah.
That's also a creative. It's a pretty rare thing to find that you find somebody that has the balance of both.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I know that having help to do things in anything we do is great.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It gets lonely being the only one who's, got your back in anything you do. Whether it's taking care of your house, or whether it's, running your studio or making your own music or whatever.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, at some point, the other shoe's going to drop and you're going to miss something. I mean, people only have so much bandwidth, and it's nice. I'm very fortunate to be a part of that Noble Steed crew, just because they're, Jason and Eric, who also runs the company, or helps Jason run it. Like they're just such focused people with good hearts that are very artist forward first. And it's something that, years of, I had some managers that, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I've had help in the past that, was not always, it just maybe didn't meet my expectations. And that's always but that's just part of what we do. I mean, you just keep going and you ultimately end up finding the right people at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I mean, so many aspects of a career in music are just, success stories or learning lessons on your
pretty
way to
much
wherever you're trying to head,
Yeah.
You can't know it until you know it.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast when I was driving up this morning and somebody said something Martin Short said. He said, this business is 98% failure. And all you got to do is just keep going, and eventually you find the right thing and the right people. And I'm grateful that I'm in a position where I've got maybe a few of those things figured out. So,
what was his characters? What were the movies that he did early on? It was like, I don't remember the one. What did he? Was there one where he was like? I'm not thinking of the other dude, the Honey I Shrunk the Kids, but wasn't there one where he like got miniaturized or something, or went into somebody else's
Inner
body?
Space.
Yeah, Inner Space.
Yeah. Dennis Quaid was in that, I think.
Yeah.
God, that's a deep cut.
I don't know why that popped into my head. Guess I gotta get out of the house more. All right, so here's one. This is sort of drum sounds and stuff like that. But as a player, seems like kind of a silly question to ask, really. But like, should we hit the drums louder than the cymbals? Help us think about things that help the drums speak well on a record, whether you're playing it or whether you're producing and trying to communicate. Because sometimes we're just trying to work with the drummer, and help them, get a better recording.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some reel on Instagram the other day that was just a good reminder of this guy was talking about he'd never been able to get a good drum sound, and then one day Jeff Porcaro came in, and he said I could have just put a 57 in front of the drums, and that was the record,
Yeah,
and that's really true. Is it really comes down to tuning. And how learning how to hit a drum and get the sound out of it that you want. It's so easy nowadays, and there's so many great sounding samples, and I use them all the time. But one thing is going back to Craig is that Craig and I fancy ourselves pretty apt at tuning a set of drums, and so much of the sound is just like. I guess you do technically you would want to hit the drums harder than the cymbals, but so much of that comes down to just learning within your own body, like how to be a balanced player, that, just wailing away on everything, just sort of whatever isn't going to serve you. Sometimes it does.
Well, there's also, I find, especially with drummers that maybe don't have tons of experience in the studio, that balance of like understanding the way you want to hit the drums and then making sure that your headphone mix works for you so you don't hit the drums wrong.
Yeah.
Drums are a lot like singing on a microphone.
They really are.
Or playing an acoustic guitar on a microphone. And electric is like, if you can be near your amp, you play the electric and it comes out of the amp and it sounds the way you want, hopefully, and it'd be good. I mean, headphones can mess you up there too.
Yeah.
But there's, it's like, it seems to be that there's a quality of playing that's more fragile than you when you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier about, when I really started to learn about this thing was I would watch drummers that were really great. Like, you want a lesson in how to play drums, like watch Phil Rudd in those early AC/DC videos. Not live.
In the studio?
Yeah. But he really just kind of played the same no matter what, because, you know, I heard from Kevin Churko once. Kevin Churko was another Canadian engineer that worked with Mutt Lang for years. And I can't remember if it was him or somebody that we both knew. We were talking about it, but you know, there's no drum bus on Back in Black. Like, it's, if you sit and listen to those drums, it's just how Phil Rudd hits a drum kit. It's how he plays the drums.
When you say there's no drum bus,
there's no, like, it's not like how we, you know, 99% of us will take a drum kit and feed it into a compression, some compression and an EQ and then a parallel and some distortion and just kind of whatever, and just sort of do this thing. On that record, it's Phil Rudd behind a set of drums that are very well tuned, and he just knows how to play them and hit them right.
In other words, one of the things that can appeal to us about drum samples is they're very consistent, you know? And so one of the things that can be a struggle when we're mixing drums is the fact that there's a dynamic variety makes us think, well, like, where do I set this compressor? And so, like, the drum bus is sometimes us in pursuit of that consistency in playing.
That's a very good way to put it. Yeah. It's a way of sort of balancing maybe a lot of inconsistencies within a performance. And that's so much of it. It's just like taking the time to learn how to hit a snare drum, how to hit a kick drum, knowing the difference of, like, knowing when to bury the beater and when not to bury the beater when you're playing stuff, how to hit a tom properly. And
why don't you break down bury the beater, not bury the beater? Because there's somebody who's listening who doesn't know what that means.
Okay, so when you're playing a kick drum, like if you're playing a 4 on the floor, like boom, right, and you're hitting the kick drum every time. Every
quarter note, right?
Yeah, every quarter note.
So it's hitting under the snare beats.
Yeah. And so when you drop your foot on the pedal, you're not letting the beater bounce off of the head itself. It's just like it sort of stays in there, right? Yeah. And what it does is it creates this kind of choked out sound, which is a lot of what you hear on most modern records. But you know, when you think about where the off the kick drum head thing comes from is a lot of the old jazz drummers, like, you know, where they would tune the drums a lot higher and it was more of a note. Yeah. So, and there is a bit of
original 808.
It is the original 808, but it's very much a style of, you know, there are ways of going, like, you know, when you're playing stuff at slower tempos, you can get away with just like hitting it and letting the beater kind of come off the head, because even if the drum is muffled, it still allows there to be a little bit more of a note, so that, like, you're taking up a little bit more space. And that's just something that comes from, you know, a lot of time learning, recording yourself. And that's something I always tell drummers all the time is, like, record yourself as much as you can and use like 2 microphones when you do it, so that you can really listen to what you're doing, because you should be able to get a great drum sound with 1 microphone. You know, and that's where that thing of what you're talking about with being really balanced on the drum kit. And another thing, there's a guy named Kevin Radomski that back home in Canada, that when I was like 19, he went to MI in LA, and I just thought, well, this guy's the epitome.
Musicians Institute.
Musicians Institute, yeah.
That's where if you're a guitar player, that's where you learn how to go.
Yeah. All that stuff. But he gave me this. He came, you know, I'd get these old guys that were older than me and say, come watch me play it. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. And he gave me this really great lesson about, like, how to hit a drum properly, because his drums always sounded amazing. And his thing, and this comes from the Picaro school, and a lot of great drummers like that. So many drummers, when you wind up, they'll take the stick all the way back, and then they'll just sort of like fire at it with no stopping point, right? It's like hitting a golf ball or throwing a baseball, right? Like, you watch a pitcher, there's a definitive point when they let go of the ball that ball's coming out of their hand. It's the same thing with the drumstick. He said, when you're hitting a snare drum or you're hitting a tom, you know, you don't have a stopping point. You're just sort of wailing away at what's going on. And he said, if you have a point, you can get really good at hitting the drum so that the stick hits the head at the end of what you're doing. He says, and think about it like somebody throwing a baseball. It's like, it's that thing. It's this moment. Because right now the end of your stroke is halfway through that tom, right? It's 6 inches below the head. And as soon as I figured that out, tuning drums got a lot easier, because I'm doing the thing that makes a drum sound good,
Mm-hmm.
because it's essentially just two things that have to vibrate at the same time. They have to, you hit one and air moves on the other, and then that comes back, and then the air moves on the other one, and it goes back and forth. So when you hit that drum like that, all you're doing is pushing the head, and it's doing the thing, and that gives it the best chance to sound the best possible way. And even with a set of drums that's maybe not tuned great, if you can hit it properly like that, you can usually get a really good sound.
Yeah.
You know?
Look, when it comes to finishing your music, nothing compares to iZotope Ozone 12. This is a complete mixing and mastering suite of tools with 20 pro modules to shape your sound. You'll find the new bass control for a tight, powerful low end, new unlimiter to restore life to overcompressed tracks, and new stem EQ so you can rebalance vocals and drums and bass without even opening the mix session. And when it's time to make your music loud, the IRC5 Maximizer gives you loud, clean mixes and masters that still sound open and clear. Save time with AI-powered workflows that keep you in the driver's seat. Ozone 12 takes the guesswork out, but you stay in control so your music translates everywhere, from streaming to stage. Go to iZotope.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off. Yeah, I've had a great drummer here tell me something like that too. I was like, his drums always sounded so great in the studio. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Why do your drums sound so? He's just like, oh, I don't really work really hard. I just kind of like guide the sticks around and let the sticks do the work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, but it's fun when you get deeper into production, and especially when you start accumulating a studio. That's one of the things that I really enjoyed, is like, I remember getting a drum set and then getting a bass and then, you know, getting these instruments, and then all of a sudden you give yourself permission. If you're a player, you give yourself permission to go sit on them and try them out, learn them. And it helps a lot. You know, I think me playing a little bit more drums has helped me explain myself to drummers in a session sometimes. You know? And to your point, of course, sometimes you bring in a drummer and, you know, they know exactly what they're doing. You know, there's no talk needed at all, you know?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you work with somebody that really needs your guidance, as an engineer or producer, you know, to get a better sound out of their kit.
Yeah.
And so it's good to be able to like explain certain things to them. You know, there's all these tricks that you learn in the rock world too. You're like, oh, this thing like blocks the hi-hat from the snare drum and the snare from the hi-hat and everything. And like, it's all just such a, it's kind of fun to explore them a little bit, but not really. I mean, it's so much more fun to just get a great, simple, you know, sound played out of the drum kit. And
gets like, you know, that's the thing, is we can't see you spinning your sticks on tape. You know what I mean? And that's, there's, and I was for years was so very guilty of that. I would just go in and just plowing and like, you know, Lars Ulriching my way through the session of just, you know, like making a lot of faces and just being really showy and playing really hard. And as soon as I realized that, you know, some of my favorite recordings, you know, where it sounds like, you know, if you close your eyes and you mentally watch the band, you know, like you listen to an old Dio record or something, you listen to Holy Diver or just anything, and it just sounds like they're back there just blasting, but you know they're not. Like, you know, like those guys are technicians and they're back there and they've figured out how to create energy without playing hard. And that is such a skill that I think all of us that work in the studio all the time are constantly working on. Is like, because one, not just completely destroying a drum kit, knowing how to hit it to get volume out of it and to get a good sound out of it without having to like completely and ultimately destroy the damn thing, and create energy within a track. And Fred Eltringham is probably one of my favorites with that. Like, he's got such a short throw when you watch him in the studio, but when you listen to the track, it's like it's humming,
heavy, and
you know, it's like
each the kick and snares are full sounding.
Yeah, they're just there, and the groove is good. You know, it's like riding down the road in a, you know, like an old Cadillac. Like it just sort of floats.
Should we? Do you want to put in your coffee order now to Fred when he finally listens to this episode? Shout out to you, Fred. Just kidding. So I'm going to take that away. That's my takeaway. Lidge, nobody can hear you spin your sticks on the guitar. So I was thinking about like that analogy to guitar, and there are these moments where you like overdo it. Sometimes I feel like the overdoing it is needed because sometimes you have to like amp up the band in the session for a minute, you know?
Yeah, but it is.
Yeah, there's like, I can overplay on guitar all the time. And that's where I learned where the secret to getting the timing right was like, stop moving so damn much.
That's exactly it. I mean, like when it's just like with acoustics and everything, like when I'm overdubbing guitars and stuff at home, like I'm not, you know, it's all about finding that making it feel energetic without having to be showy.
Right.
You know, it's like you want to be able to close your eyes and have people listen to what you're doing, and they have an experience when they're listening that it creates this visual of like this massive hyper thing. But you just know that, like, you know, being able to chug eighth notes on an electric guitar really well and make a song feel good is so much harder than.
Yes, it is hard.
You know this. I mean,
basics muted eighths on the verse.
Yeah.
And especially if you double it and you want them to both sound matched and tight.
Yeah.
It's like, man.
That is my Everest every time. I used to be a lot better at it than I am now, but yeah, man.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. And then, yeah, acoustic is another instrument where like there's a bigger, it's a bigger chasm than you realize between, you know, you can walk into the other room thinking like, oh, just go lay down a quick acoustic track until you do it. And then you're like, oh, wait, is this played quietly with the mic pre-turned up? Is it banged out with the mic pre-turned down? Is this loud in the track? Is it quiet in the track? When you're recording it, can you hear yourself? Or do you need to hear it like super loud, even though it's going to sit back in the mix?
Yeah.
Or does it sound better when you don't hear yourself?
Yeah.
How many overdubs have you done with somebody, or a singer or a player, where they're like, yeah, I couldn't really hear myself for the next take, and the first one was the great one where they couldn't hear themselves at all?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's because I think part of that comes down to they're not thinking about what they're doing. They're thinking about the fact that they can't hear themselves. Right. So they're just sort of muscle memorying this thing.
And that was the good way to do it.
Yeah. You know, there's that old. Have you ever read the 10 Commandments of Guitar Playing by Captain Beefheart?
No. Oh wow, can you remember it?
I can't remember all of them, but there's.
Can I add to this? When I was in Costa Rica, I actually had an epiphany because I knew that Captain Beefheart told his guitar player to go. Just go play to a tree all day. That was his assignment.
Listen to the birds.
And I realized when I was there, I was like, I finally understand playing to a tree. All right, take over.
Well, there's, it's great. Just look it up. The 10 Commandments of Guitar Playing by Captain Beefheart. It's amazing. But one of my favorite things that's on there, and I saw this when I was 20 years old, and it's always stuck with me. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, it's important to play like a drowning, what is it? You always want to play like a drowning man, where it's just like you're sort of always out of your element. And he wraps it up by saying, like, if you're guilty of thinking, you're out. And that's really that thing of like, that's why the first take when you don't know you're recording is 9 times out of 10 always the best one, right? It's how you get people over that red light fever. Is I'll do this with bands all the time. When they come in and they get really scared and we put them in the headphones, I'm like, why don't you, like, play me, when you're playing live, like, what's a cover that you do? And they'll play whatever fucking song they're going to do. And they start to have fun because they realize that, oh yeah, this is what this is supposed to sound like, because they're not thinking about their music when they're doing it. And then a lot of times, and I'll just leave it in record. And a lot of times just say, okay, well, I need to get sounds for this thing, and just play me the song. We'll worry about it later. That kind of thing. And usually the one that they don't know that they're fully like going down and recording, if I'm trying to get the majority of it live, it's a good way to get people over that hump of like, it's, you know, as soon as they know you're recording, they just freak out and, you know, they tighten up and the band starts to feel like they don't know what they're doing. And there we go. Oh, those are.
Yeah. So there you go. Listen to the birds. Your guitar is not really a guitar.
There's a whole expanded thing.
Oh, there you go. Practice in front of a bush.
Yeah. Walk with the devil. If you're guilty of thinking, you're out. Never point your guitar at anyone. Your guitar is a divining rod. And what does it say? What does it say? It's something about
always carry a church key. Yeah, that's great. That's basically a bottle opener, right? Isn't a church key a bottle opener for?
No, he means a key for a church. And
really?
I have a church key on my keychain, which is weird.
Man.
There's actually there's expanded things on all of this. You should.
Let's try this one here. Far Out magazine.
Oh yeah, this is the one.
If you haven't listened to Captain Beefheart Rockstars, you need to go check it out.
Yeah.
Don Von Vliet, also a painter.
It's at the bottom here.
Yeah,
there it is.
There we go. Which one do you want to pick up?
Let me read the one, number 5.
Number 5. If you're guilty of thinking, you're out.
Yeah, if your brain is part of the process, you're missing it. You should play like a drowning man struggling to reach shore. If you can trap that feeling, then you have something that's fur-bearing. It's amazing. Like
they sort of, I mean, like when I discovered Trout Mask Replica and like, you know, Bat Chain Puller and all those, it really blew my mind as to what a band playing together could sound like.
Yeah.
You know, the grooves, where a groove is, where the music is, like what the progression could be.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, there's less singing and harmonies going on. It's less like that. It's a little more like poetry over music a lot of times for Captain Beefheart.
Yeah, but there's something to that though. I mean, I think like I did that when I first got out of high school and I started to really explore music. Like I got really into John Zorn and Joey Barron and Bill Frisell on guitar. Like they had this thing called Naked City. It was Bill Laswell, John Zorn, Joey Barron, and Bill Frisell, all these New York jazz guys. And it was like early. It's where Mr. Bungle and like those sorts of bands sort of grew from that really esoteric, sometimes incredibly atonal music. But there was something so fascinating about that stuff to me. Just like, what is the extent that music and human beings can stretch themselves to with these insane tempos and all of this crazy stuff? And like, I think I think it's really important to learn that stuff, because once you figure out how far you can go, then you just know how much further you have to come back to actually get in. You know, if you're getting into a place where you're working on commercial music and doing those things, like having that repertoire sort of in your back pocket, like it's fun sometimes. Like I get when I work on some commercial records from time to time, I get a chance to just stretch out and do some weird shit. And if it wasn't for listening to Captain Beefheart and all of that kind of stuff, like, you know, you wouldn't know how far you can go until you really get there.
Yeah. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak and distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift for you to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins and Pro Tools. And the best part is, these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. To take it in a totally different direction, one of the other artists that I noticed you had in your playlist was Lindi Ortega.
Yeah.
And you guys did Waiting Around to Die, a great Townes Van Zandt track.
Yeah.
And I've been learning a little more Townes.
Yeah.
Just like rediscovering what he was all about. So, and great, amazing acoustic sound on that too.
Yeah. You know what that was?
What was it?
It's Lindi had this little parlor, Fender made her this little custom parlor thing. And it's a 57, about probably 4 or 5 inches directly off the sound hole.
Wow.
And then she sang and played that live. That record was actually a lot of fun to make. I had a RCA 77 on her vocal. And it was when I was over at Eastside Manor, when I was kind of running that place for a little while.
With Todd,
yeah. Yeah, that record was fun. So I made that record with my good friend who has since passed, Jason Rowdy Cope, who was also the guitar player in the Steelwoods. He brought me into that to work on that record with him and Lindi, and it was a real exercise in like getting to know how a studio can be a part of the sound, like really be a part of the sound. The bathroom in that place has got, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 foot ceilings, whatever it is. Right. I mean, Todd always told me that he drew the plans for that thing on a napkin and then went for lunch, and that's what the house, what it was when he came back. But But, we were trying to find this thing. Like, I wanted to record the acoustic and the vocal live, and nothing was working. Nothing felt cool. And then Lindi was she used the bathroom and then washed her hands, and she was singing. And you could hear her through the door, and it was like, wow, this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So literally sat her on the toilet, and I put a 57 in front of her and the 77 on her vocal, RCA 77 on her vocal.
Now, is it important if the lid's down or not? Or
it's generally a lid down sort of thing. You get
Sorry, Lindi.
But, no click on that, and it's a 4-song EP, but, no click. And I basically just hit record and let her go. And I said, let's just sing this until we like it.
That's great.
And if you actually listen to that one.
What a great story, too. I didn't know I was singling out such a good story on that track.
The process of that record is one of my favorites because we just let her do her thing in the air. And that song actually has a mistake in it that if you listen to, it's after I think it's at the top of the third verse. She comes out and she sort of like, she stumbles over herself and like adds an extra beat and change. Like it's not really in time, and there's no way we could ever do it again. And she just played it in this way that was like, that it made it really interesting sounding, and we kept it. And then literally just built the remainder of the tracks around her with what we did. And that's definitely one of the projects that I'm the most proud of because of the process, and her songwriting and her performances and everything are just so great on that record.
That's cool. That's cool. And then another great acoustic sound was Wyatt Flora's. I'd written that down. That's in your playlist. And it just reminded me to ask you if you have thoughts about when we want to do sort of an acoustic rock record or an acoustic band record, what have you learned about acoustics and drums and combining them in a smart way? This probably goes back to the 7 people in a circle kind of discussion too. Like,
yeah,
do we get to do that? Does that force the drums to do something different? Are there ways like the Jayhawks? I think about some of those records.
Yeah,
and the drums are still like, forward and powerful, but there's acoustics that get to do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I always approach. I mean, my go-to acoustic mic, pretty much on everything that is on that playlist that I've recorded, is a 57.
Wow, that one might have been in a 57 too?
I know it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, 57, you're back in action. I'm getting more of you.
Yeah, I mean, and I lifted that from watching the Tom Petty documentary where they show recording the Wilburys stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all the Wilburys in a semicircle with 57s on each guitar. And then there's a condenser mic, like a 47 or something, in Omni in the middle. But
wow.
That's the sound. And I not on every record, but there's a lot of times that, like, if we've got something that's a real mid-tempo thing, I'm going to get me and the other guitar players and the artist, and we're going to sit in a semicircle and we're going to cut, the windshield wiper acoustics, as we say. And because it just has that thing. And there's something about, especially with like, more acoustic driven music, for me, having a 57, I treat an acoustic guitar like an in-tune shaker almost at that point. Like and you can really, there's just it kind of, the overtones are just different. The way that it kind of pokes through it'll sit on top of a hi-hat and a snare drum better if you're running it in mono. I don't know. My ear is just really attuned to the sound of an old J40.
Big Bowie fan too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those acoustics and drum combos are like really remarkable.
Yeah. Because if I'm doing something really nice and finger picky and open and that's an acoustic song or whatever, like you get a great acoustic guitar player in, like 9 times out of 10, I'm going to grab a large diaphragm. Cause if it's just got to take up a little bit more space. But if you're going to do the cool rhythmy Americana-y acoustic guitar thing, I get asked all the time, man, what'd you use on that acoustic? It's 57 in front of an old J45.
Yeah.
With old strings. And it sounds amazing every time.
The D28, the Martin.
Yeah.
What sort of songs does, stop me if it's not fair and I'm asking you too many granular questions about guitars, but what sort of songs or style does that evoke for you when you think about that on a session?
I'm
asking selfishly because I just got one.
Oh, man, it's just, I like to have one of you, like a D28 or a D18 with with a J45 or something like that with 57s.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just lefty righting acoustic guitars, it's really the perfect marriage of like that whole additive EQ thing.
Mm-hmm. Because the guitar can sound crisp, but the mic kind of brings it back.
It does, but like most Martins to me sound really bright. Like the Randy Houser, Cody Johnson song that's on that list. Like Randy played his old D28, and if I'm being really honest, a Martin is not the first thing that I reach for.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the way it feels in my hands. They've just never really been the one for me, but I love the way they sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't love the way that guitar sounded when I first started working on that track with him. But once I started mixing it, I started to understand that like, oh, Martin is the sound of so many records that I love. Like it's such a different vibe. But going back to the, like having those two separate things, there's not a lot of, you don't have to do a lot to touch it when you get into the mix. Once you get your compression kind of dialed on that. Cause then they complement each other frequency wise, on the left and right channel of a mix so well that you just sort of pull it up and go, all right, well, that's it. That works.
Yeah. It's fun to do. Well, dude, this is a blast, man. And I honestly, I didn't know we were going to get into so much awesome stuff. So this is really fun, man. I really like talking about all the things we've talked about. I feel like music is it's in the musicians, it's in the performance, it's in the way that we appreciate it and interact with it in the studio. So it's really fun to be able to dive deep in that stuff.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Yeah. I got one more question for you. This is our closing question. It's hypothetical. I like to ask all my guests on the show. But this is, and you've answered it once before, so you get to answer it again. But we take the Wayback Studio machine, and you get to go back in time, rewinding the tape machine, and find young Jay, whose last name is Tooke.
Good save.
and you say, listen, dude, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing that you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself, other than practicing to a bush.
Always hear an idea before you shut it down.
Great.
That's the big thing is if, when you're in there and somebody says, yeah, but what if we did this thing in the bridge? Let it happen and go listen. Because 9 times out of 10, what you think is wrong is usually the right way to go.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And I like to think that if you've got a few ideas, because maybe there's a few ideas on how we could start the song or what the bridge thing could be, hear them out, because as long as it's not too time consuming, but like usually the one that sounds best is just going to stand out to everybody, right?
Yeah. But also too, like, giving yourself, like, we live in Nashville. You can walk into any studio within, 2 miles of where you and I are sitting right now. And there's probably a room of 4 of the baddest, musicians around that can just go in and lay waste to pretty much any chart that you put in front of them. And it's going to be radio ready and do the thing. And that's amazing. But there is something to be said for when you give players like that, or even just anybody really. And if you give people just a little bit of time, it's taking the time to get the idea right and learning how to, when we first start out doing this, taking the time to learn how to make the idea right, to know how to trust those instincts. And then you get into that. But, there's so much to be said for just taking a beat, go for lunch, go get a cup of coffee, come back, take a second, whether on anything. It's just take a little bit of time to make sure it's as good as it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as a band, for any of us who played in a band, we know what it's like as a band to sort of explore and discover something new.
Yeah.
And letting people who are pros who play together all the time, they would like to do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, especially because you'll sit there and like hammer out these ideas, I remember like putting a little dictaphone in the corner because it's all we had to record and be like, jam this idea. We got these parts. We're amazing. Yeah. We go eat dinner, come back and go, that sucks. So,
let's play some more.
Yeah.
So let the rock stars know, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you? What if they're ready to come down to Muscle Shoals and make their next hit record, or just their next, vanity project or whatever?
Man, anything. Let's just work on something. I love working on anything with anybody.
Where can people find you?
jaytooke.com. I am also on Instagram at Jay Tooke. There's not a lot of Jay Tookes in the world, so I'm pretty easy.
It does have an E on the end.
Yeah, Jaytooke. Yeah, not Tooke.
Well, awesome, dude. Thank you for doing this with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Rockstars, thank you so much for watching and being here with us. If you enjoyed this, of course, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and drop a comment in too, and just tell us anything you thought about the interview. If you got questions about any of the different things we talked about, we'll jump in and do our best to answer them. And also, it helps the channel and helps more people find these videos, and that helps us convince awesome people like Jay to come back on and do another episode later. So, dude, good to see you, man.
You too.
Thanks for hanging.
Thanks, man.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our fantastic sponsors who help make this episode possible. iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, SAE Institute, Spectra 1964, and Picker. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off at iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com for any plugin purchase. Don't forget, you can start mixing right now with my free course, Mixmaster Bundle. You'll find the link in the show notes below. And if you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors also in those links in the show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They are going to help you make your best record ever. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this, it's a great way to help support the show, and I really appreciate it, and I thank you as well. I'd also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Jeffrey Simmons, and Max Young. Thank you so much for watching and listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.